right. We did it. Art Fight Podcast, number 90. Very special edition, off schedule. But certainly glad that it's happening, and I've been meaning to get these guys together here for a while. So welcome from all whereabouts, international and otherwise. We got Ivan Verlaan from Toronto, right? You're coming in from Toronto?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some people have escaped, pandemic wise, to like parts unknown, but it seems like you're sticking it out, doing your thing still, so that's great in Toronto. And then of course, Mr. Regular from Regular Car Reviews.
My mouth is filled with food, and it's good to be here.
Yeah. So, hey, so seriously, thanks a lot, dudes. Thanks for working with me through all the technical things. And like I was telling you, Brian, before we got started, I love the idea that you guys sort of don't have a veil for your sort of technical difficulties in your podcast. And for really, it's actually a staple of kind of your aesthetic and your general sort of attitude. That
Yeah.
As a person like me, and then as a perfectionist, also like Ivan. Ivan, are you okay with me calling you a perfectionist? Because it seems kind of legit.
Yeah, mostly accurate. Yep.
Yeah. You're like, well, I mean, I wouldn't phrase it exactly like that, but no.
Let me make it perfect for you.
Yeah, right. But man, so. I really, when I found out that this was, you guys were making a short film sort of version of higher production value for a Regular Car Reviews sort of episode, I guess that's a very brief way to put it. The idea of, Brian, you sort of being a little bit more shooting from the hip, even though I know that you're also a perfectionist in your own right, but maybe just in other areas, right? You seed the things that you're never going to be an expert at, and triple down on the things that you're good at. And then on the other side of it, for this collaboration, Ivan, your work is highly professional, highly cinematic, and challenges the entire idiom of and legacy of Regular Car Reviews. So I guess without getting into like more interviewy shit, my thing is like that's been seen probably 100 or 200,000 times already. What's the response been to this project? We'll get into what it's about, but essentially, this seems like the response has been pretty good, and that the audience generally has widely accepted it, even though it's sort of at this sort of antithetical production standard that they're used to.
Is that for me or for Ivan?
It's for Ivan.
Okay.
Oh. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, for the first few days, I would check back in the massive comment thread on YouTube, as dangerous as that might be.
Yeah.
I checked in just to see, like, we really didn't know how it was going to be received. We modified what the typical format was going to be, not just in terms of visuals, but the focus of the writing even, and the dirtiness level, I guess, in general.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of what Brian and Nick do. So I knew we were doing something different as a one-off, but would the rest of the audience understand that? And so, yeah, I checked in on those comments, and of course there's the detractors. There's this thing looks way too nice. I'm confused. I can't handle this.
Yeah,
forget it.
Yeah.
Or like go back to the paper bag shooting that you always do. Like there was those comments, but I mean they were definitely the minority. So I'm really, really happy that the general RCR audience saw what we were trying to do.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's that sort of vibe of the band that went in high school, the band that you were into the most or whatever. They're kind of underground. You feel like that you identify with this thing, and then all of a sudden they put out a highly polished major label release, and you feel like on one hand, yes, it's higher production value, but on the other, you're like, man, I lost this. I don't know, like this emblematic sort of punk rock kind of anti-establishment thing, right? So what I think you guys did really well. And I don't want to really rehash. You guys have talked about the video ad nauseum, in terms of what it is and why and all that. But generally, this film is sort of a love letter to a VW Westphalia van, taking the regular car style of writing and elevating just the film element and all of that. So when your band gets co-opted, right, a lot of people are going to get weird about it, but I mean, it worked. I mean, if anything, it's like when you go when you're as an adult, you go back and listen to the bands that you felt like sold out, and you realize that first record they did that was their major release, that shit was brilliant. Like, it was really beautifully done, but you're still at the time like hanging on to some punk rock aesthetic. So how did you
Right.
navigate that, or how did you think about it? It seems like you were probably at a risk, right, of letting go of something to get to the next trapeze.
I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah.
Like, we're trying to move to the next level, and we will at some point. And there are people who want you to remain 23 forever, because, well, maybe they themselves are afraid of growing up. I remember thinking about that. Who did I think? I got upset when Calvin and Hobbes stopped. And when did they stop? Like 90s or something like that?
I think so.
And I thought it was unfair. Like, he says, I'm going to retire at the top. And also Seinfeld, like, I'm just getting into this, in high school. Why does this have to end? Now, us, Regular Car Reviews isn't ending. And it's never going to be fully professional, as evidenced by my filling my mouth with food and then talking on a podcast. But, chew. I want RCR to be able to continue on YouTube, in addition to be regular cars. It would be, I think Ivan and I talked about this, like, when RCR gets picked up on a future platform, that will just be called regular cars. And then regular car reviews on YouTube will be like the OG format. And I think being on, let's just say, Amazon or Netflix, because those are the big two. I like the idea of being derogatory again if I want to, because YouTube has gone very... I like to use the phrase St. Louis, but to go for the middle of the road. But they want that focus on the family dollars. They want everything to be quick and easily digestible stuff, which is why the algorithm now knows if you're saying fuck.
Yeah.
So the fucks have gone away. And a lot of the comments a lot of my dick has gone away. But then again, yeah, there's only one Andrew Dice Clay who can just make, pussy jokes forever. And, we're not him. Like, I'm trying to think of a comedian who was like super dirty, but then had to evolve. I guess.
Eddie
Who can
Murphy?
you think? Eddie Murphy, yeah, that's a good one. Well, Patton Oswalt, he still does. Well, he was actually no, he's still dirty and nerdy.
Yeah,
Something like that will come to me.
I'd say Bob Saget, but he's still filthy in his stand-up routine.
Yeah,
it's just, but he has the Full House
he's got
persona,
that
right?
ABC money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love his whole deal, just that he's got that
raunchy comedian.
right,
yeah.
like this. He's got this polarity that he can work that is so bizarre. Being on a show like Full House and whatever that quote unquote stands for, you know what I mean? Right. Versus like that gives him license to go to the moon in terms of just being completely subversive. It's a great thing to be tethered to the extreme. I love that. Yeah. So now with Ivan, the thing that I'm always curious about is in terms of process is how people relate to each other and how they communicate with each other and how they get the most out of each other. And sometimes that works really well. Sometimes it's a process, where it's like, man, we hated each other through the whole thing, and then we patted each other on the back and had a beer after because we knew that we argued it out the right way. There can be any number of ways that these collaborations can go. But I love the idea that, Ivan, you coming from a pure place of just objective, appreciation of regular cars and what they've been doing. You're walking into it with that responsibility of, what has preceded this, but at the same time, you want to put your own you want to put your foot down on certain things, like, no, like, this is the way it's, this has got to go if it's going to be on this level or be this concise or be this whatever it is. So I'm just curious if you guys had any moments or in your process where you felt like there was a good dynamic like that, or was it something, Brian, where you were just like, I don't know, fuck it, just make it look good, man, and good luck in Canada with the whole thing. But Ivan, I guess I'm just curious about from your perspective, like about the process, because I mean it's really like a cool sort of worlds colliding thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was very close to the example you just gave. I mean, Brian, he's like, look, I trust you, you do it, right? Like I would say any friction in the entire process would have come from me insisting too strongly that Brian and Nick remain involved in every step, right?
Yeah.
Because I was cognizant and still am very cognizant of the time versus benefit analysis that you have to do for YouTube, and just the incredible time constraints that they face on a weekly basis putting out their regular content. So what I was asking them to do, even if I was doing the filming and the editing, was to put a tremendous amount more of their time into this project. And at a certain point, it became clear that, like, by asking them at every step, I am over asking on this project. I mean, we know that in the grand scheme, it's great for everybody if this thing gets picked up, blah, blah, blah. But, it's also like, at what point do you just say, okay, just get it done, right? And I think it took me a couple of other warm-up projects and even halfway through this project to understand that, where I didn't feel like I had earned that trust with Brian and Nick yet.
Oh, yeah?
Until I don't even know the specific moment, but I really got the sense that where it was just like, look, we trust you, just do it. It's okay. I needed that assurance at a certain point where I just stopped sending them every cut. And I was like, okay, you'll hear from me when this thing's done, or near enough to done. And even then there's still a million little check boxes I need from these guys. So yeah, I mean, we did some early collaborations where I filmed one of his regular reviews. And then we did a collaboration for the Lemons Rally last year.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the first one, it was, I'm going to do your process. I'm going to just, I'm here just to like help you a little bit. And then I realized the insanity of how fast paced it was. But Brian wasn't going to give me a lot of direction. He's like, well, you're a professional. You're just going to, what you're bringing to the table is better than what I do anyway. So just go do it. Right. Yeah. So already off the bat, he hadn't watched a frame of anything I'd ever filmed. And he's handing this episode over to me. And I'm like, what the hell? You don't know who I am yet. Right. And then the Lemons Rally, same thing. He's like, you'll just make your thing. Right. And it worked out in the end, of course. But the amount of trust that Brian placed in me early, I thought was insane. This guy's got a huge YouTube channel and he's just like, whatever you make is good for me, Yeah. So I feel like on my end, I felt like I had to earn that trust, and prove to them that by halfway through this, now you can kind of see it taking shape. You see where I'm going with this. Finally, there's a form to it. You can trust me to take it over to the finish line. But I mean, so I guess I don't know from Brian's perspective, but from mine, I feel like any friction would have come from me wanting way more involvement from them throughout and saying like, all right, we're now doing the 12th draft of your script. I'm sorry, but we need to make more revisions. Yeah. Or, like on the shoot itself, figuring, well, it's your channel. You guys do video production. You're going to haul some lights around and plug stuff in. But they're like, I don't want to break your stuff. Like I don't know how to roll that cable properly. And from a place of respect, they were saying, we shouldn't do that. Yeah. So therefore, they're on these 14-hour crazy long slog days that they didn't really need to be. And so I felt bad, and we worked that out. But it was all this, like, it was just this over asking of their time because, and we landed at the end of this in a very happy place, knowing that they're extremely talented at writing and sourcing cars and so the producing and writing side of this, and Nick with music, and so it's fine for them to be in that lane, right? And I don't have to get them into the other lanes, you know, um, and so it's more than anything was just like me finding my comfort with that, and not. And I guess my own insecurities about being too dominating within a project, you know, and
Yeah,
not
yeah.
wanting to step on this guy's toes who's built this channel over 6 years. You know?
It's hard. It's hard too to I mean, in any sort of interpersonal interaction, it's hard to navigate where people's sort of lines are and their kind of tolerances for creative push and pull that can be kind of wrapped up in egos, or you don't know, right? Like, so being on a little bit of a sort of kid gloves kind of scenario for a while, I'm sure is like the approach. And then you start to figure out like, no, they're trying to just give you this thing. Just take it. Yeah. Just fucking take it. Like it's, I would imagine for you, Brian, it's like, you know, okay, so let me say this first. Ivan, with you, you're like a guitar tech who's like a luthier that builds beautiful guitars and is a craftsman, and then you're going to see Brian play a show and he's smashing his guitar on the stage and setting it on fire. You know what I mean? It's like that's what people want and that's what people like, but at the same time, you're in there like, fuck, like, okay, these are different worlds, right? And then Brian, you know, you're in a place where it's probably in a way sort of automatic for you to sort of cede all of that to Ivan, because all you ever wanted, from what I've gathered, is that like the whole impetus for the channel and what you're doing is born of a spirit of I'm gonna do it. If all else is fucked in life or whatever else, I don't care. This one fucking thing that I can totally control, I'm gonna do it, and I don't care. I'm not going to adhere to anybody else's sort of expectation or anything. And so if you've come about that way, then it makes perfect sense that for someone to come along like Ivan, that you'd just be like, look, man, like I want you to be like be the better me with respect to like the sort of film and production, you know what I mean? And you look like you know a hell of a lot more than I ever could, right? Just at a glance. So just go with it. What's the worst? What's the worst thing that happens, right?
Yeah, the only part in the film, well, there were two things where I felt frustrated. Was one where I just wanted to go to fucking bed, like when you're at like your parents' house, and I was sleeping in your car, realizing it's 11:30, these guys are still going, like I just wanted to sleep. Let's get back to the Airbnb. And then Nick and I had this thing we'd say to each other, like when it came time to like revisit the script, which was a learning experience for us. We just said Jiminy Jillikers to each other. When we got a letter from Ivan, an email from Ivan, which is a Simpsons reference. They had to film. There was a movie being filmed in Springfield, and Milhouse played the lead of Radio. Like, it was the Arnold Schwarzenegger type character as Radioactive Man, and then Milhouse was a sidekick. And there was this one scene where the producer comes in to Milhouse and says, Milhouse, we need to shoot the Jiminy Jillikers scene again. But we've done it. It took 47 takes, but we got it. It's done. Yes, but we have to do it again from different angles, and again, and again, and again, and again. Then he just grabs Milhouse and takes it out. So that was like the joke. And it's like, I thought the script was done. Now we need to do it again. But that's the truth of like, hey, we want to film this for real. Get used to this. Get used to the project being like a classic car. It's not done. It's never done, and that's why there's 15 director's cuts of Blade Runner.
Yeah. I mean, so Ivan, like when you were in the spot of putting these guys to work, you're sort of digging into the story at this point. I'm sure you had your shoot very well planned, right? Storyboarded, thought out on some level, as you pre-production people do. But I guess I'm just curious about like when you were first coming into it, and I would imagine that there's a weird convergence process of taking the strength of the writing, which on its own and in its normal habitat functions perfectly, and it's honed and it's iterated and it's on the channel, that writing style and that editing and that time frame, everything just works. I'm imagining that there was probably a point where you were saying how we film this and how we execute this, there's going to have to be some perhaps different types of adaptations to the writing. It maybe more organized, albeit tangential sort of approach or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just curious about like if you felt like there was a point where the writing and the film process and the storyboarding and the pre-production and then getting into it, did you feel like there was a point where it kind of started to snap together, or was that something that happened way later? Or how much did the script being apart from you in its origin, how was that a challenge for you or not? Does that make any sense? Like I just feel like through the process you're adapting what you're doing to this writing and probably stretching muscles in the regular Cars style that haven't been stretched before.
Right. Yeah, I don't think there was much of a challenge to it. It was. This is an exercise of you write it first, and then I'll figure out how to illustrate that. Right?
Okay.
So it really was like, we know what the car is going to be, so write a draft based on that, and then I'll plan out what I'm going to film based on what you've already said about it, right? And then of course once they actually drove the car and we got through the 4 days of filming, we realized what we had and what we might still need to get, and so yeah, we adapted the script at that point. But I think any adaptations were pretty straightforward, just based on practical considerations, whether it was facts and figures about the car, but also like what could we actually achieve within, I think it was 3 primary production days and a half-day pickup when they were here. So that's just not a lot of time to get 15 minutes of broadcast quality content. So yeah, I mean, it was more just a practical adaptation than anything else.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious. Yeah, so that's good. I mean, it's a more comfortable. You have to, I think, to have a fixed piece of writing or a really, really well-established piece to start with, to plan around, I'm sure is helpful. I just didn't know if there was something in the process where you were like, man, we're having to flex here. There's a bit of an exchange. But yeah, so, and then the other thing I wanted to kind of bring out a little bit that I hadn't seen you guys talk about with respect to this, and that I guess I suppose I'm sort of in a distant sense tied to, is there's a deep and pretty deep running thread through the piece that ties to something that is quite emotional and that is pointed towards the notion of the dad, and, and there's something a little bit heavy in it, right? Like it's not a lightweight sort of like this is for the dads kind of vibe. It was a different thing. It was really about. It actually kind of reminded me a little bit of. There's an angle or a perception I think you have of your father when you're young, that as you get older you can always sort of instantly connect back to, where you're looking up to them physically. You know what I mean? Like and you captured a lot of that sort of, like the sort of, I don't want to call it reenactments, but the people that were sort of acting in the piece really elicited this feeling that I think anybody could, or most people can relate to, and I felt like that was one of the most surprising aspects of it to me, was how it really had. I know that regular car reviews always runs a sort of through line of something emotional, and that's something that's always made it successful. But I think that the way that you did it in this piece is that's the newest, most breakthrough way of conveying the normal regular car review style in this new way. I mean, to bring in those people and to really drill in that narrative, sort of, what do you want to call it, through line, or the kind of the heartbeat of the thing. Really, to me, the center of it was that. It was really warm.
Thank you.
Yeah, was that something that you sort of set out to do? Like, I really want it to be tied to family and feeling in that way, or was it just like, nope, that's just it's the origin of the vehicle that we were looking at, and that's what it was about?
Usually, when I write scripts, and when Nick and I write scripts, we'll write the ending first and work back from that. So it's easy to make a through line if you know where you're going with the script. So yeah, we normally took the sentimental thing. It would be very easy to go negative with the whole review. So we and be excuse me, be extra dirty with it. But because the intended audience for the video is someone who hopefully will give us money, then that means you can't turn them off. Can't talk about my dick. You can't talk about banging strange pussy in the back of this. It has to sell in St. Louis, man.
The cutting room floor of this was probably remarkable.
Yeah.
Well, so I was able to provide some family footage.
Thank you.
8mm footage to the project, and I have to say that it was, so it opens up with footage of my father holding my older brother on the beach, and my father passed away probably, I guess, 13 years ago, and there's a weird thing where when you are older and you look at archival footage of your parents, for instance, and you just realize, like, man, they were doing all that. My dad was just getting out of Vietnam and with 2 kids and flying planes and doing all this shit. And I'm like twice the age he was then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a strange prism to look through back to see your elders as people that are younger than you, that you still look up to in this sort of and revere in this way. So the very opening of that piece, I feel like for me, I had like quite a unique experience with that whole project that no other human being could have, because it's actually materially my family in this piece, and with my father not being around, right, and the elevation, me thinking about times with my dad and taking us hiking on the Appalachian Trail, or taking us skiing, or doing whatever, all the things we did when we were kids, and he had a 1982 FJ40.
Nice.
He bought that when it was new in 82, and that was what I learned how to drive on, and all that. So even though it was not a Westfalia, it's a very similar kind of thing. It's a very specific type of car. And I don't know. So just for me, my whole experience of seeing that and the way that you guys put it all together, and then to top it off with, I want to talk a little bit about this too. Like the set building that you did, Ivan, is just tremendous, and I can see that obviously it's lasting in your space. You're making it like this is going to live on for a long time. You basically built your studio into like a living sort of museum or fun house or something. But you built this beautiful set, and you had this old television. On top of it, you had some sort of photographs, and some of those photographs, one of them was me sitting on top of my 1964 Corvair in my high school parking lot in 1989 with my friends like standing on the hood. Like I think about like that. If I had that car now and somebody stood on it, like I would push them off. Like here I am, like my friends, like one of my friends, if you look in that picture, one of my buddies is like 6 feet tall, 6'3", and he's sitting on the top of the windshield. The top's down, and he's just got his feet on the hood with his butt on the top of the no, I can't believe that. But anyway, so to have like my sort of high school vibe in there as this kind of backdrop in a subtle way, and then obviously the video footage of my family, it was really meaningful, man, and I really appreciated how you guys utilized it and did it with a sort of reverence, and it fits so nicely into the whole thing. I'm not going to say that it was easy to send that to my mom, because there's still not for any emotional reason, for just the commercial interstitial that you guys put into this piece. This is that fine line, right, Brian? Like how do you St. Louis this thing? And I think that was probably a good test, because I sent it to my mom, and she probably didn't even get that far into it, but there was no like, you used our family and what? They're talking about what? Yeah. So man, it worked out. It worked out really well. And I was really honored and happy to even have just that sort of small, distant contribution to it, man. It was really cool how that worked out.
I wouldn't call that a small contribution, though. I mean, that really was a home run for us. Brian tweeted out, does anybody have home video footage of camping, right? And you saw that, and you replied, sent us this thing. And I mean, whether you're a digital hoarder or a hoarder, whatever, it's paid off, because like it couldn't have been more perfect. Like when I saw that clip, actually, I was at your place down in Pennsylvania, Brian. We were doing something with this film, and you're like, "Oh yeah, we got this thing." And you showed me the clip, and my jaw was wide open. It was perfect, and so when I saw your home footage, I knew that we could actually do this whole thing. You know, like it. We didn't like we knew that we had to rely on archives of some sort, and without a cohesive storyline from a single family, right? Without something that held it all together.
Yeah.
Just the few scenes that we filmed with actors weren't gonna hold it together. So so I couldn't believe how good that was. So the one clip was already a home run. Fast forward a bit longer, a bit more forward in the future, and I email you directly and say, hey, any chance you have any soccer footage?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I happen to have that. So we've got your soccer practice in there, and then I'm like, all right. I mean, you've already saved this production, so why not ask for something else? Do you have any footage of you in front of a car in 1989, 1988? And he's like, well,
Matter of fact.
So yeah, like it was absolutely perfect, and I love that there's somebody who is a video artist who is a fan of the show, who has already worked with RCR in a totally different capacity. Like you're a part of like that RCR family, and that your footage is the stuff that's in it makes this thing so much more special. So I mean, it wasn't just a small contribution by any means, and because it was one family, it really helps you connect all the dots within all those archives,
Yeah.
Where otherwise we're hunting through iStock.com or whatever and trying to find disparate pieces.
Or like thrift store hopping, and then it's like 4 different. Yeah, I think also like, and I mean, that's heavy, and I really appreciate that very much. That does not go unnoticed by me at all. I really appreciate it. But the thing is that if you had like sort of a hodgepodge of thrift store or assembly of just different people's families, I mean, you still could have done it, but because I mean, you still could have worked it out. But I think that for me, when I'm working on something, it could be a record, it could be anything. There's something about knowing that there's an authenticity of your source material that you're borrowing or using it. If you're not shooting something, right, and you have to bring something into it, even if no one else will ever know, I feel like that there's an intangible resonance that footage like that can have in the way that people actually respond to it, sort of subconsciously. Like when it's something that's real and tied together in actuality, as opposed to just hodgepodge of, like you said, stock images or whatever. People can subconsciously sense, I think, the authenticity of footage or things that are included in things like that, and it matters. It does matter.
I can't imagine how big that emotion hit either. Like, because I mean, the script was, I mean, we weren't pulling the emotional punches by any means. I remember early drafts of the script were not as nostalgic as where we landed in the end. Yeah. And there was more humor, but also less of the sentimental stuff. And I think, Brian, I mean, you'd say the same thing. Like Nick's contribution usually is the sentiment. Yeah. And even to some degree, I contributed one section of that based on my childhood memories of my father, who's long gone at this point. But so for me, like, I just wanted to get a little bit of my life in there. And for Nick, the theme song was based on his longing for his lost father. So like, I mean, everybody's got father issues on some level or another, right? Yeah. And so I think what's that phrase? There's universality and specificity, right? Yeah. So the fact that we could take specific, like, your actual footage, but then layer on top of that things from our lives as well, and thoughts that we've all had. I think that must have hit, I mean, like you said, harder for you than any other person on the planet, because you're looking at your own dad.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit worried, not that something bad would happen or that it wouldn't be used well, but just I was a little bit worried about how it would hit me when I saw it, because I'm not.
It was a leap of faith to send your home footage to regular car reviews.
Yeah, it's true. I'm kind of an idiot, but it worked out. Yeah. So, but the thing is that I don't know if you recall in the video, but when it is that I think it's right at the opening, if I recall. I mean, and or right in the opening sequence. And the score, by the way, is really nicely done. I don't know how you did that, but that was really thoughtfully done too. But the emotive quality of the score, while seeing my father, while hearing the words go over it, it was a strange digital sort of gut punch for me to sort of experience. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was like it was kind of thing where you can't figure out whether you want to cry or smile or what, you know. It's like this weird netherworld of emotion because it just is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, in filmmaking you always hope to hit emotion, right? Like you want to elicit a change of some sort in your audience. You know, you want them to go on an emotional ride with you. I mean, of course, again, yours is a singular experience for sure. But you know, I was really happy to get a lot of the comments, especially about, you know, the end scene where the father and son are you know, doing the camping thing and just sort of like relating and smiling at each other in a sunny field. And we're hearing the sentiment about realizing that you know, your dad is making it up as he was going along.
Yes.
Your dad was making it up as he went along too.
Yeah.
There again, we're back to that universality.
Yeah.
And I think that hit a lot of the audience too, right? I think it was a really great thing for me to actually be able to read responses from folks, because I don't ever get that in my work. Like I work in film and TV where
you're white labeling everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's broadcast, but there's no comments on your TV broadcast, right?
Yeah.
So it was really cool to just sort of see that, like, however sarcastic or guarded or whatever some of the comments were about that ending, that it did drive home for a lot of folks. So
yeah, it's in terms of the vehicle itself, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I guess I'm just curious about how that happened, what that was, because I know that typically, Brian, you guys don't have a lot of time ever with the cars that you are filming, right? You're never really camping out with a car for a long time.
No.
Or do anything like that. It's very, very quick. I mean, my God, when I was a witness to you guys in Nashville filming at the Lane Motor Museum and just seeing like a rotisserie of just, you know, like, next car, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild. So what was the experience of being able to sort of live with a car for a little while? And from what I understand, I may be mistaken, but Ivan, maybe you were able to live with it more to film it, but Brian, maybe your interaction with it was more limited?
It was, yeah. We wrote most of the script before even driving this thing. My concern was not really to give an accurate view of what it's like to drive one of these things. My concern was to just make a sellable script and more to talk about what this car represents rather than the vehicle it was. A lot of my knowledge of the Westfalia vans came from Justin Kramer, who does work on them. Often, he'd rather not, but he knows how to.
Yeah.
So I was channeling him a little bit. I didn't drive that Westfalia van once during the whole shoot. I wanted to, but those days were getting long. And since the script was already written, then there was really no point of me holding up production to just go have some funsies around Toronto in a van that doesn't go very fast. I got the gist of what the Westfalia does as a vehicle. And after being around it, I knew I was right in my assertions that this is a redunculously stupid vehicle.
That's great, right? That's a perfect, when you think about paralleling that with sort of the understanding that your father was flawed as you are and will be, you know, the parallel of just this vehicle of like, nope, it was not perfect at all. In fact, it was very misguided in many ways and very susceptible. But you know, the way that all works, I think is really powerful, man. I mean, it's a really cool thing. And then turning the corner, I guess, a little bit to just like, I don't know, business kind of shit. But I mean, this is because you want to make something bigger happen. And you've mentioned, you've mentioned some other platforms, you know, is that, and I want to kind of bring forward a little bit of some of the things you were saying sort of about YouTube earlier, you know, but it feels like a dangerous thing for anyone to be reliant on income in any way on a monolithic platform that is that is controlled by robots. I don't know, like it just seems like a weird place to rest your head. So I can so I can see a lot of people wanting to, you know, have that ability. I mean, is there something where irrespective of the outcome of this and who picks it up or who doesn't or what it leads to, or, you know, maybe there's things going on I don't know about, but that's fine. But is it something where it's like in the same spirit of RCR, like I'm not going to be stopped, we're going to do this? And do you ever look at like other platforms or greater sort of modalities on how to do your thing?
No, not at this point.
Yeah.
I'm making enough to pay the rent. I knew enough to put away money for lean times. I mean, to be topical about these times, YouTube profits are down about 50%, and because no one's making product, so there's nothing to sell, so there's nothing to advertise, so the price of ad space on YouTube goes down, so the price of the creators, so there's less to give out to the creators. So there you go. Don't worry, I'm not starving. In fact,
I'm eating right now.
And I want to buy another car. Not. Nick and I were talking about this before he called. But anyway, I can go into that later about what RCR's third car would be, or rather, my third car would be. I had 3 cars for a while. I had the Subaru, the MR2, and the Falcon, and I got rid of the MR2 because I hardly drove it. Because it was so perfect, I didn't want to touch it.
God, I can identify with that so much. That problem.
Yeah.
It's like such a weird thing to be precious about something, but also, I feel like having a classic car that you use as a daily in that way, just knowing that you're not going to find replacement parts if you get hit, this is over. There's something about the volatility of that.
The body of the Falcon is. Oh, excuse me. You're talking about the MR2. Not the
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, just like me driving around in my car, I use it as a daily. Nashville drivers are fucking crazy. It's awful. Roads are bad. I still drive it as a daily. I don't drive a ton, but I mean, I'm not going to just put this thing in a museum and let it sit there. That's what it had been doing, you know, and I sort of rescued it from. They want to be driven, but then you're in this constant like battle of like, can I just accept this car, whatever may happen? Or am I gonna be able to live with myself if this, something goes wrong? I don't know. I just sort of let it go, man. I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just gonna drive it all the time, and then whatever happens. It's like a lesson in impermanence all the time.
Yeah, I'm fine with that from the Falcon because the Falcon was flawed from the start, but that MR2 wasn't. Like I was the second owner. It was beautiful.
It was.
All it really did was carry my laundry to my parents' house. And speaking of laundry, that is what I'm saving for eventually, and what I hope I don't even what we want to call it, the grand vision for RCR or RCR Amazon or RCR Netflix is, gosh, I'd like a house someday. Renting is great, or maybe even just to rent a house, something with a garage, something where all my stuff isn't spread out, something where I don't have to not that I play my music loud, but I want to have a party over. I want to have people over and not have to, because Chrissy next door has to get up for work at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And also, well, I've installed my apartment. It's fine for 2 people. Any more than that, you're saying excuse me every 3 feet.
Yeah.
I don't know what the square footage of this place is. It's not much.
So Ivan, you've got a nice studio, right? You've got a whole your company's got a whole big setup, and you got old TVs in there, a weird lobby, psychedelic shit going on. What's happening with all that? Like, tell me about your company a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have an affinity for mid-century stuff. So like,
Me too. Yeah.
so that the lobby in my studio is sort of my outlet, I guess, for that.
Yeah.
So like a lot of that already existed. Half the stuff from the set of our the opening in the piece was just I already had it here, so I just like moved it 10 feet. I just had to buy the TV basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I've got this production company. It used to be a more like well-rounded digital agency, you'd call it. We just celebrated 20 years in business last year, so like
Nice.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't talk about it ever, which is my downfall. But yeah, so we've got this agency. We started in web design, web development, then branding, and got into broadcast services about 13 years ago. So I've been working up the ranks within TV and film. I have a business partner now in a New York studio that happened about 11 years ago. So we've got Toronto and New York, and Toronto's older, so we have more facilities here, more equipment, and we have like a decent little both production and post-production space. So we got a few suites, got some open space to do some studio shooting, and it's nice to just be able to like take over whatever it is, 400 square feet of the area, and just say for the next 3 weeks I'm just going to build a living room here in the 1960s and then flip it over into the 1980s, and nobody's going to bother me.
And you can keep all your stuff there, and it doesn't clutter your living space or your other world. You keep things separate. I think, Brian, that's kind of what you're talking about, right? It's like
I'm all spread out. I got stuff over at my parents' house still. Gotta go over there to do laundry. That's where I was earlier today. That's like a little thing. I mean, my parents are getting up there in age, so it's nice to go say hello.
Yeah.
My dad, and that's another thing. I can see my dad. My dad's still fine, but I noticed that he's slowing down, and a little bit he forgets what he told me yesterday. And sometimes it feels like he gets on these word trains. Like he'll start telling a story, and you've heard this, like you told me this yesterday, and he'll plow right through it. He'll say, well, at any rate, and just keep going with the story. And I'm like, Dad, my dad's 75 now. So it's going to be a new experience as we begin to care for our parents. I suppose it's something new for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a weird wrinkle how the roles switch. I mean, for the whole pandemic situation, me just trying to in the early stages of this, trying to explain to them like, no, this is serious shit right now, and this is not a coin flip that you will win. Like you have to get yourself right and out of around from other people, neighbors, all this. So it's a. I found myself sort of cognitively struggling to just get the message across in a simple, almost like a directive. And I realized, like, man, this is exactly how they felt with me as a kid, because I could not, and they would get mad because I couldn't synthesize the simplest assertion or command possible. I just had too many questions, or I didn't want to have my style cramped, whatever it was. Yeah. It's funny how that works. So, and then, Ivan, with you, is this a sort of a tangential foray relative to your business to work with RCR, or is this something that falls right in line with sort of your general MO of clients and doing business? Even though I know this is sort of like a different type of collaboration than a work for hire scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something new and different. It's not something that we've ever done before at all. We're typically at work for hire, and so a production company will bring us on to supplement whatever part of the production they need, whether it's a cinematographer, editor, colorist, producer, whatever. So yeah, that was kind of new, but that's also sort of where we're going with our company as well. We've been at this for a really long time, and have been also identifying like what's not out there right now that we think should be. So, I mean, it started way more, I don't know, innocent than as calculated as that might sound, because
Yeah.
you know, at first it was just like, I really appreciate what these guys are doing. Could I maybe help in some way, right? It was like, I'm not gonna, I don't have a bunch of money, but I've got a lot of experience, and maybe I can help them on an episode or two, right?
Yeah.
And then it turned into, oh, well, actually, what happens if we like do something even bigger with them?
Yeah.
And so we did wind up dumping a bunch of money into making that pilot in the end.
Of course.
But like it,
Yeah.
but that it was just because we had a passion to make this thing and make it, regardless of whether or not it lands for something bigger, we want it, like we have this relic, this thing that we made that exists out in the world, and thankfully reached a bunch of people and hit those emotional buttons that we were talking about earlier, So on one level, I'm just happy with that. And of course we want it to go on and be something different. And, we're at a point with my company where we've been developing different ideas, and are starting to talk to platforms or broadcasters to try and get those ideas made. So
Yeah.
we're still a services company, but are moving also towards original production. So it's a bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to think about, how do you keep doing things? How do you scale things that you're doing? Because every project you take on is going to be its own sort of heavyweight lifting, and its own, it takes a lot of work to do what you're doing, and you can only optimize so much. The work is still just the work, and it is what it is, and the bigger that it gets, the only thing that can probably happen from that point is just more sort of, I don't know, convoluting of maybe what your original sort of style or hope or intent or methodology or the way that you want to do your shit and be known for your creative style, whatever it is, like, or your professionalism. It's a hard thing to think about, like, I got to grow this business, but how do I manage that, and still keep what made it, good for me to begin with, or interesting to do. So I think it's a cool middle point. I mean, if I were, is there like a simple, do you ever think about like, what is a simpler way to do this? Like crudely more simple? Or are you a kind of person that's like, no, I want to go to the extra level of detail for everything? Like, for a bad example, but I think about something like I notice things all the time where I'm like, fuck, that is such an easy thing to do, and it's so earnest, and it just works, and nobody had to work that hard. It doesn't mean that people didn't have to work that hard. It means that it looks effortless, but I think about like Mystery Science Theater or something. Like, what a great fucking idea. You know what I mean? Just show the damn thing, put some silhouettes in front of it, get some guys in a studio to roast and edit, and you're done. Like, this is amazing. Granted, there's a hell of a lot more craft, and I'm sure nightmares that went into making that, or whatever, just like anything is. But I'm really into these ideas that, like, whenever I see somebody do something simple and elegant and effective, versus then when you see like craftsmen, right? And you're definitely a craftsman, struggling with, I want to do, it's like, do you want to be, the world's greatest cinematographer, or just have the best idea and the best execution of something? And how do you reconcile those two things? Does that make any sense? I feel like I wrestle with this all the time, and I'm not explaining it very well, but it's kind of like, I'm an audio nerd, I'm a mastering nerd, I'm a video nerd, I'm a nerd in a lot of things, and I know what's good and what's better and what's best, and I know what I aspire to in terms of skill level. But it's kind of like when I first started playing drums when I was a teenager. You want to play you're playing 30-second notes on everything, because you're just trying to figure out, like, how much shit can I do? Like, what can my body even do? What are the limits of my technical capacity? And then when you get older, you're like, can I play a 4/4 straight ahead beat and make it perfect and not and actually leverage space? How do you reconcile that from your perspective, Ivan, in terms of like the complexity of your work and the heaviness of your work and the gravity of it, versus like, how do you find like efficient ways to sort of streamline what you're doing, or just get to the essence of something and bypass a lot of the shit that people usually get caught up in sort of traps with?
Yeah. So That's a great question, and you actually expressed it perfectly, because that's a struggle that I don't think I'm ever going to stop having, and I think I would hope that a lot of artists do just deal with that very issue, and I've probably overused this phrase, but I always think of it like I'm water, and I'm going to fill whatever container you give me. So if you give me 6 months to make something, I'm going to use all 6 months. And probably then just a little bit more. And at 11:59 before the deadline, I'll call it done, right? So as it relates specifically to this pilot, there's a lot more we wanted to do, right? We cut about 4 minutes out of the script just out of necessity of we can't afford to keep shooting. Like, we've spent 50% more money than we were willing to spend on this thing, and like 300% of the time, but it's not like, for us, it's not just a business argument, it's also a passion argument, right? So, but even I, on a passion project, will have limits and have to say, forget it. So like, I was legitimately evaluating whether or not I should drive to Connecticut to go film a first and second generation Volkswagen bus with a different YouTuber, right? Like, he was on board with having us in. It was just a scheduling question. But I'm like, just doing that is going to cost me at least $1,000 in gas and Airbnb. And then I even was talking to Brian briefly, hey, do you want to come out with me and do this? And now he's got to go out there. And I'm like, well, how do we do a value add? Can he like shoot a review out there or something to make it worth his while for his YouTube money? It's like this whole, and I just went, okay, no, there's stock footage. We'll find some archives. Like, I get that they're crazy asks. I have to explore them. I have to see, can we make something? And then I just got to set it aside, you know?
Yeah.
When you say like, what's that genius idea? I look at RCR like that. I look at what Brian and Nick have done, and I'm in awe of what they've produced for 6 years, every single week, pushing out something that, you know, I'll pull it from what they've said in the past. The quality varies from week to week, but there's a lot of home runs in there, and within their constraints, they've prioritized the writing, you know. So, you know, they bang out these videos by, you know, what, an hour to 3 hours with each car in production. They'll co-write it for a day, and then I don't know how many days Brian spends editing, but the speed at which they work, 3 days, so all in all, 5 days roughly, give or take, on a video. Yeah, that's what I put into just pre-production on our special, right? Like, and that was just making call sheets and getting permits, right? So like, the scale of effort is so out of whack. But so to me, I look at that and go, they're producing really great stuff in a systematic way, as in like, not in a bad way. I mean, like, regularly they're coming out with this stuff, and it's clever and it's funny. And so I look at that, and on some level, sure, I wish I've thought about, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Brian, but like, you know, I've thought about saying, well, hey, how about I just hang out with you guys for a few weeks and we'll bang out a bunch of videos, you know, because like, I could still add that production value, and what I can shoot is going to be way better than what you're able to shoot, because I have the equipment, I've got the experience, right?
Yeah. But that would actually be a stress for you though, Brian, in a certain way, wouldn't it? Like, as much as it would be a benefit, it would be a trade-off, right? I don't keep going, but I just wanted to like put that out there.
If we filmed cars, if we didn't have a controlled environment, yes. Because when I film cars, we're done in 3 hours. Every second that I'm standing, that camera is going. I have the whole workflow's in my head. To involve anybody else with that, it'll look a little nicer, and it's fun to experiment. There comes a video. There's an upcoming video where I had a car all day, because my friend Dominic from Chicago, he bought a car and drove it out here. So him and his girlfriend need something to do. So he came out here. We filmed all day, but we experimented with other ways to get road shots. And what I did is we put cameras on my motorcycle. And I was riding my bike about 2 feet away from his car. So with the GoPro on.
Nice.
And like, that's going to make an interesting shot. Because that's the car's actually moving. It's going fast now. And we're on a road. Now, So that was neat. And we also did some other stuff. I have one of those, like a consumer long zoom 4K camera. But I had this talk with Ivan before. Like my 4K camera isn't any better than my 1080 DSLR, because the 4K has a sensor about the size of your pinky nail, and the DSLR is full frame. So DSLR still looks good at 1080 than that thing does at 4K. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Mm. I still like my Panasonic. It's the dick around camera. I give two shits what happens to this thing.
Yeah.
So it often gets good shots because I don't care if it breaks. So I put this camera in dangerous situations. Yeah. Like, whatever, I don't care. Anyway, if I was doing something where I had to be on camera, I'd need someone to hand the camera to. So that would be, like when we did the Lemons rally, and we tossed around some other ideas that weren't car related that I wanted to do. I'm like, that'd be neat to have that along. Of course, they're all festival based, and who knows when that's going to happen again. Even it would be fun to like just do a road trip somewhere. Like I've never gone on an adventure with the Falcon, and I did drive it 4 hours yesterday. I drove it to my friend's house. People who are familiar with the channel know who Tony Airlines is. Shout out to his Instagram. Go follow him, Tony Airlines Pilot Fun. So he lives out in Hamilton Township, New Jersey, and that's about 2 hours from here. So about 2 hours in my Falcon is of that thing going down the highway and the wind and everything. So, no. It'd be fun to go on a trip though, where I could do about 2 hours in that car before like the sound, before you need a break. And that'd be fun to have someone along, to go on a road trip somewhere with that. Like, okay, we have this car, a road trip in a resto modded classic car that's kind of built for handling. That'd be neat. Or they do another Lemons rally, something like that.
So Ivan, that was you crammed in that Yugo?
I was only in it briefly.
Okay.
So I was following along in my very modern, very luxurious Mercedes SUV, and had no issues with any of that journey. So I was in the filming car, getting exterior shots mostly.
God, when you talk about going on the highway for a long time with an engine just running, I was remembering, your Lemons rally stuff with Brian. With the Yugo, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think that that was a format that worked in terms of us collaborating together. Like that was a much lower effort thing for me, where I had a backpack and a tripod. Like I didn't have all the artifice and all the crap with me, and have to deal with this sort of like high cinema grade stuff that we were shooting the special with. So, I've expressed this to Brian before. Like I'm totally into doing the sort of travel stuff that they do, and I think can like really add something to those bits.
True.
But that's why I haven't like said, hey, let me film a bunch of your episodes with you, because I can replicate exactly what he does. I can be in and out in an hour and shoot that stuff, and it will look better. Like I will improve what he does, but the only benefit to that is that he can maybe focus on something else for a while. But then what's the benefit to me, right? Like, how am I furthering my craft with that? And I'm like, I suppose I do my other services for hire, but like that hasn't been our relationship, right? Yeah. Like it's been more like, can I do something that is interesting for me as a filmmaker or as a cinematographer? So, I mean, I admire what they do, but then on the other hand, I have to build a career as a cinematographer. Yeah. And so if I'm doing something that has complicated lighting setups or really interesting camera moves, or with this pilot, I was learning how to do rolling shots in a higher end way, still entry level as professionals are concerned, but higher than strapping down a tripod in the back. Yeah. So like, there's a lot of learning there for me, and learning some of the producing side. I won't get into the specifics, but there was a lot that I got from doing the project as well. So,
and that's the way it has to be, right? If you're in your position, the only thing you can retain is the value of it to you, and the license or ability to say, I will do that, or no, I won't do that. And it's not bound by some overhead or payment or something where there's this other power exchange that can often screw up a lot of really good things. It's cool to work in a laboratory type environment like what you guys are doing, without all of that, because you're just going to you're going to get to the essence of what works or what doesn't so much faster, because you don't have the veil and the business bullshit, work for hire kind of dynamic. Well, at the end of the day, I call the shots, even though, Brian, you do at the end of the day call the shots, right? It's your property essentially, right? But I think the best things happen when people can just let each other. Like when I was producing a lot of records, you would have times where if an artist wanted to work with you, then they would come over to your studio, you kick stuff around, you play music that you like or that you're working on, or maybe get them to put something down as sort of like a sketch, and you kind of play around. You have to sort of go through that process before somebody's going to be like, okay, now I want you to produce this record, and we're going to be in a studio for 4 weeks, 18 hours a day until it's done. You have to have some warm up, right? Some dinner, something, right before all that happens. So that's a good spot to be in. And so one of the things I'm doing, I've found this to be a really fun question to ask people. So I'm going to ask you guys, and you guys can give me your best story if you have one. If you don't have one, nobody's responsible to have one. But I've been collecting these oh shit moments, right? But everybody that's an expert in their field has seemingly a story where they had the most miserable, embarrassing sort of failure or shortcoming, or just missed the boat entirely, or whatever it is, some hugely awful thing that happens where it's the most, demoralizing experience of your life. And I'd like to hear about it. So I didn't know if you had anything, Ivan, like where it was like, yep, there was a time where I was working on this project and I screwed the pooch this way or that way, or this was the most humiliating professional failure of my life, besides this moment right now.
Yeah, agreeing to be on a live podcast.
And you don't have to. I mean, here's the thing also. I think it's perfectly reasonable that you don't even have a story, because you've just been running the table.
I'd love to think so, but that's probably not. I mean, I'm sure there's a worse thing, but the thing that pops to mind was probably about 8 years ago, where I had already been working in post-production for a few years, and had just been shooting a bit here and there on the side, kind of doing corporate-y stuff, but got an opportunity to be a camera operator on a new sort of reality event show thing that it was on for the History Channel up here. And so just sort of more as a tester, I think, because I was doing post on the show, they're like, yeah, you can come and operate. And so they were going to fly us out to the West Coast, to Victoria, BC, and film these biopacks, like basically just a short documentary about the characters that are on the show. Mm-hmm. And there was some sort of a miscommunication, and I'm going to probably say it was me just not reading the damn email properly, but a part of my equipment package was supposed to be bringing a tripod, and I thought they were providing everything and not including the tripod. Well, so I show up for the shoot, and they said, so where's the rest of your package? Like, well, isn't it with that stuff over there? No, the director just looked at me and said, well, I guess you're just going to be shaky all day. And so I couldn't do the style of shooting that they wanted, which was rock solid, and I'm on a prime lens. This is getting a little specific, most people won't realize.
It's cool,
but yeah, so I'm on a prime lens with no image stabilization, which means you're really going to see any little shake, and it's a tiny little handheld camera. It's not one of the big broadcast shoulder mounts, which are more stable. So basically I knew before I had recorded a single frame, I knew all my footage was going to look like crap and not be what the director wanted. And it took a long time before he wanted to work with me again. Yeah. So that was not great. I'm always now over prepared when it comes to equipment.
It seems that way, right? Like you're very even in our exchanges, right? It's like, okay, well then this is how this needs to be, and this works well this way, and you should try this, and but you do it. You're very good at. People have different vibes with that, right? People that know more than you about things. You have a very sort of just a genuine, helpful kind of nature about you. That's not patronizing, right? I'm sure
thank God.
I'm sure you've been in a lot of situations. Well, I mean, ultimately it depends on personality types too, and all that. A lot of people can be patronized in situations where you're like, I had no idea that you thought I was being a total dick there.
Yeah.
I thought I was being fully normal, but we're trying to get some shit done. So I don't know. It's hard to monitor yourself in those kind of situations, but I'm just all about the facts and like, okay, what needs to get done? And I don't, Brian, like that moment, like when you were filming in Nashville and you had just been talking about Ivan. I didn't know Ivan at all at that point, but you were like, when I saw Ivan and he had the cases and the just like everything he's got cutouts for every fucking like just perfect.
Yeah.
Like, and then
I have one Pelican case and I think I'm awesome.
Yeah, and then you're like I'm trying to just remember what I have in my pockets.
There is a thing I notice when I'm on the road, I can't put anything down because if I put it down, I forget it. Brian, don't put it down, put it on you. And sometimes people try to hand me things, and I'm like, I can't take that object because if I take an object, it's going to go out of my brain. I need my wallet, my phone, my key. Well, we don't have keys when we're on the road. Where all my stuff is, and if I start thinking about it, I'm not going to think about filming.
I have one pocket where my lens cap always goes in that one pocket, and I have my lens cleaner in another pocket. And if I stray from that formula, forget it. Yeah. So what's your failure, Brian? What's your?
There was the time the guy ran into his own car, and I think it's the first frame of a Honda Acti van, and I had a friend with me who was okay. I have to set the scene. We're driving through a cornfield, not through the corn, through a path in a cornfield. The Honda Acti, the subject car, is not being driven by the owner. It's being driven by a friend of mine. The owner is in his other K truck, is in a K truck, like a Mitsubishi mini truck, K truck JDM thing. He's driving that. I am in the bed, braced with my legs and holding my SLR like this, filming the subject car. We go up to a small hill. The camera car is manual. The driver lets off the clutch and backs into his own car.
Oh.
And partly it's always my fault because I should have known to tell Eric, who was driving the subject car, don't follow closely when we're on the road. I got a zoom lens. But he followed closely. Of course, that's because we just got finished doing on-the-road shots where you do follow closely. Different camera, different lens. I didn't take my good lens off-road. I had a worse lens, but it was also, I think it was like the kit lens, the 18-55, rather than what's, when we shoot on the road, it's a 28-80 something, 80, or 24-85 or something like that, and it's always at 85. So that was an oh shit moment because I see the car coming. No, boom! Now it was a love tap, but it was still damned. Like shit. We had some other oh shit moments when cars just kind of veer close to each other. We've had a few run-ins with DCNR, which is Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. These
sounds so
are
shady.
They're park rangers, but they have guns. So DCNR is usually park rangers for a lot of the National Park Service around Pennsylvania. Not a whole lot going on in parks. And if there are, it's usually they're looking for drifters or meth heads, maybe busting kids, smoking the reefer. But not a whole lot goes on in this section. So, you know, they all want to be Dudley Do-Right and have their next big collar and further their career. Granted, we need them out there. They're the people who come find you. And the whole opiate thing is probably why they're carrying firearms, although we do have bears. So there's that. It's good to be armed in that respect. So, but I remember this one time when this frickin' Judge Dredd of a community park. Like this is like a medium-sized like lake. Like it's a place for canoes and stuff. And this guy and his GMC Envoy police package comes out. He's got a gut. He's got a freaking Glock. He's got extra mags. And he's like asking, what is this for? Do you have permits? Stuff like that. And I'm like, and there's, so usually, like every single time I've had this problem, I talk my way out of it. But at any moment, it could go wrong. Oh, and I remember I was with other police officers, like some of our volunteers who had the cars that day were also police officers, and they're just standing and smiling as I socially engineered this guy into a better mood, and nothing happened. But those are my oh shit moments. Ivan can tell you that when we're out filming, my number one goal is to not appear suspicious. So no big cameras ever. We are not filming a YouTube show. This is my friend. He's thinking about selling his car, and I'm just taking pictures.
That's good.
That's an easily digestible story. And usually people only approach us and are concerned when it's like a Corolla or like a legit pedestrian everyday car, or like some Hyundai that is worth like $800.
So it just feels like surveillance at that point that's unnecessary or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like why are they picking on that guy?
Yeah. If we have a classic car, we could be there all day because that makes sense. Attractive car, taking photos and video. No longer confused. I'm going to go back to playing freaking Bejeweled on my Metro PCS phone and not deal with these people.
Yeah, it's like if you're out photographing a model, doing like the sort of, okay, here you are. You're scantily clad in this alley, and we're gonna shoot these photographs of you. People are like, "Oh, that's a beautiful girl that's half naked." So that's fine.
Yeah,
that's totally fine. But then if it's like any other thing where it's just normal people being photographed, it's kind of, well, what is this for? All of a sudden there's like this media, the weird specter of media looming over the scenario or something. Hey, Ivan, do you remember
this? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Ivan, do you have any like journalism background at all, or anything in that realm?
No, not specifically journalism. No, I went to film school briefly, but not journalism. I've worked in a lot of social issue docs, so like I've around journalists and people with journalistic intention.
Yeah.
But
I wonder. There is a point, right, where you have to, like, for me, at least in my life, I've kind of just gotten to the point where I really just take a lot of satisfaction in trying to elevate others. I'm not really about like particular causes. I mean, I will support something or work on a project that is about that thing, perhaps, but me championing something, I'm not that guy. But I think that there is something about, as you get older, the directionality, I think, of your work has to kind of change. Even if it is how you make money, because the more it's just sort of about you, the more exhausting or tiring it seems to get. If it's like your vision or your thing, there's a point where you you have to turn that directionality to start sort of not support, but sort of uplift or raise, elevate other people. I think is sort of a turning of the corner in the creative sort of existence. I mean, not everybody gets there. I mean, I wish I was one of those people that's just like, I'm just gonna just get a Ducati and start doing heroin and see what happens. Like that's.
I think those two were something you Ducati and heroin.
Yeah, like I always thought when I get old, like if I reach 80, I don't know if I want to go beyond that really anyway. So I just thought I'm gonna get a motorcycle. I don't ride motorcycles at all. I mean, I did maybe when I was a kid, like whatever XR80s or something, when I was a kid.
Right.
But I mean, I can ride a motorcycle a little bit, but I want to get one where it's just wildly overpowered and dangerous, and then I just start using some sort of psychedelic drug or addicting drug that I'm afraid to do. But it made Jimmy Page really good at guitar, so I want to just know like how that would work, But I want to do it at this non-volatile part of my life. So I feel like when I'm 80, it's sort of like, good for him. Like people don't get mad, when 80-year-olds take on something new generally. But I'm not a needle guy though, so I don't know how. Like I don't know. I have to think about this more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up for you guys, but I really appreciate the time. We've gone a little longer than what I even thought, man. But
I can ramble.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. But again, really appreciate it. It was an honor to be in any part of your project, and I'll make sure that in all the broadcasting of this that we give everybody the links and all that, so I won't bother you guys with telling people where they can see it, because go to YouTube, Regular Cars, figure it out, grow up.
Yep. Yeah, YouTube, Regular Cars, and Ivan is Visual Inclination.
Thank you. Yeah, Ivan and his whole team. I feel like we've done a couple of podcasts at this point, and I'm the only face of this, but like I've got a partner, Julian, who's been like super into this behind the scenes, and we've got like a whole team of guys that made this happen. So like,
so why won't you let him on any podcast then? Like, what's the deal with that? Like, why are you trying to like keep him out of it or whatever?
Minor pandemic that's been going on, and like social distancing and all that. Julian like does not want to ever be in front of a camera. He's just like, he's the behind the scenes guy. But anyways, I just wanted to give a little shout out to all the folks that actually made this all possible. So Visual Inclination is really a team. But thanks.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Well, and do you guys have any other Regular Cars announcements or things that do you have any breaking news, Brian?
No, apart from I want to get a third car again, and I don't know what to get. It's going to be something to keep me busy during the pandemic. I want something to wrench on. I'm not sure what I should get.
I can tell you.
What?
Here's the thing, Brian. Think about how many hours of your life you have spent telling people, like assessing their needs, what they're going to use a car for, and then suggesting like, this is what you need. I know that you want the whatever, but that's a piece of shit. Just get a Corolla. You're not special. Stop being special, right? Or whatever. Like you're really good at assessing people's needs. If I remember correctly, it seems like at one point you were kind of not brokering, but sort of helping people like actually buy cars in some way, or you were guiding somebody. I forget what it was. Maybe some family.
We were doing like punch-up work for a show on Esquire Network called Spike Ferrison's Car Matchmaker. So we wrote a little bit for that, but often it's a question that comes up in almost every single interview.
Yeah.
What car should I get?
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you. So, you are going to get. Now you can choose the exact year, but I suspect it's going to be probably a '99 4Runner.
Oh, that could be a thing. I didn't even think of that.
I
thought you were going to say get a Corolla, like you've been telling everybody else. Put your money where your mouth is.
And if you need the space, get the wagon.
Yeah, the DX. I saw one of those today with an antique plate on it. It was like a total sort of methed out shit falling off of it. Just terrible condition Corolla DX wagon, and I still was like, I would love to have that car. But no, 99. I think 4Runner, because the thing about it is like for for shooting and doing and winter and 4-wheel drive and all just the perfect balance of all the capabilities without feeling like I loved your 4Runner review when you were talking about like how it's like driving a Camry. You know?
Oh yeah, it totally drives. It's a camera. Just drives like a camera. Which
is like the greatest thing about it, right? Like that it's not this like you know, it's not trying to like blow your mind with some driving experience, but man, is it super versatile, affordable, and there. We got for my wife, we got a 2004 V8 4Runner. And it is like,
yeah, they don't do the V8 anymore.
No, they only did it I think for a few years. And I realized after we bought it that probably was stupid, because even though the V8 is great, the V6s had timing chain, V8s have a timing belt. And so one of the first things that we had to do, because hers is it's a very low mileage 4Runner. It's like 70,000 miles, and it's 2004. So we were like, man, that thing's probably rotted, and like we haven't come this far to have it just break down on the side of the road, and it's an interference engine. Like I'm not going there.
Yeah.
So but anyway, but the whole thing is like back window goes down. And you can safely keep stuff in the back secured easily, because the door is actually, the hip of the door line is just perfect. So I've been able to actually put like cases in the back of it, and then put like instead of using a gimbal camera, just using my Inspire 2 drone camera that's perfect gimbal, stabilized, but just shooting out of the back of the car, like perfect. And I was like, God, those guys, if they could do this, because then you can just sit in the front seat. So I had my wife driving. We're driving through downtown, getting all these shots, whatever. And I'm in the passenger seat with like the display of the drone. I can turn the camera. I can, totally control everything that's going on. And I'm shooting without having to shoot through glass, without the fear of anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to have anything tied down. It's just kind of sitting back there, and it's fine. So I had a totally stabilized, controllable, monitorable camera that I could do everything from the front seat while shooting out the back. And I was like, God, this is the best car. Besides, I guess the Land Cruiser, anything where the back window goes down. That was like that's the dream.
Have you calculated your mileage there with the V8 option?
Yes, it actually does it for you, and then we've also calculated it, and it is horrible. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's pretty consistent horrible. It's almost like, I like it when gas mileage is so shitty that it doesn't really, you're not thinking about highway versus city. It's just the same shitty mileage, like no matter what seemingly that you do. But it's, I think, about 17.
That's not bad for a giant truck like that.
Yeah, for a V8.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like
it's reasonable. But anyway, But yeah, what was I going to ask you? I guess I don't know. We were just trying to get out of here.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I don't want to keep extending this, but like
No,
the car that you want to get, is that a replacement to the Subi, or is that?
No, in addition to.
Oh, in addition to. So to act as a filming car? Or...
No, it's to distract me from the interminable ennui of this, the year of our Lord 2020.
I see. How are you with mold restoration? Can I just bring my project car to you and you can fix it? Because I'm not really doing
just take it all the way down to the frame and soak the whole thing in bleach.
Yeah, if you're up for it, I'll tow it down there.
I clearly don't have the time. You're serious?
I was joking initially, but if you are open to this idea, I would be forever grateful to actually fix this damn thing.
I gotta take everything out of it. And then just, I gotta just strip the interior to the frame.
Yeah.
Is there mold on the dash?
Not much, no. But
Okay,
but the whole thing.
Yeah, not much doesn't count with mold.
Well, there may be some specs, but not that I'm sure of. There's definitely some like on the door panels, and it's on every soft surface.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely gutted down to metal.
What
situation.
Is the
car? An 01 TT.
Oh.
And I do have a replacement like set of seats to put into it once everything's ripped out, but it's a daunting task to actually strip something right down to metal, and it's like, once you're into it, you got to really put some time into it to like get it past that milestone of everything out. Otherwise, the mold's just going to keep growing when you've like left it half finished.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That sounds like a great place to start. That sounds fun.
So I was looking into this. It's been 5 years I've been towing that fucking thing from house to house to house. I've moved 3 times since that happened, and I've owned that car for 12 years now. So I'm coming up on a halfway mark of like just owning a car and not using it for half of its ownership.
Everybody needs an albatross.
I have to fix it.
Everybody needs an albatross, you know.
Yeah.
You got to have those things.
I figured it would be my first Fix It YouTube series because, you know, I got nothing else to shoot coming up. But
what have you done to mitigate the mold so far?
So early on, I wiped everything down with white vinegar and got all the surface mold off of it, which then just grew back a few weeks later. And then I started using this actual mold treatment stuff that you get at Home Depot. And that actually did work for longer, as in like it took several months for it to come back. And so I've done that proper mold treatment stuff like 3 or 4 times over the years. And it's just like I do it to get to the point where I'm safer to remove everything, right? So there's not all the particles and crap coming at me as I'm disassembling it. But each time I do the treatment, I'm like, oh, here's a new contract I got to work on. So it's going to sit and regrow, right? So, but like I'm also at a point where mechanically the thing's been sitting for 5 years. So I've got to flush all the oil out of it. I don't even know half the mechanical problems that I'm going to be facing now, having this turbocharged 4-cylinder engine just sitting, right? I'm not mechanically inclined enough to even know. So I'm teetering on that precipice of like, I should have sold this for parts 4 years ago. Why haven't I just sold it for parts as of this spring, you know? But I don't know. I've said this to you, Brian, like I have a moral obligation to fix this freaking thing. So like I screwed it up by letting it sit. This was my attainable dream car from high school. It's got to get done.
I would say guilt and self-loathing are pretty strong motivators. So it sounds like you're well on your way there.
Oh, flogging myself daily for this thing. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well.
So, anyways, there's a free project car for you, Brian. If you.
Boom.
In Toronto.
Yeah, in Toronto. We just got to
cross the border. I don't think I'm allowed to cross right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Ivan, do you know? Are you familiar with Bright Sun Films and Jake? He's a guy that lives in Toronto. He's a young guy. He's got a huge YouTube channel. He does like the Abandoned series and sort of like kind of. He has a series called Abandoned. He also has one called Bankrupt, basically on business, huge corporations that die. He does these sort of small documentaries, but he's got, I don't know, 1 million followers or something on YouTube. And he's one of those guys that started, when he was 15. And so by the time he was 22, like he's killing it. I actually worked on a doc with him down at Six Flags, New Orleans, for that. But I just didn't know he's a Toronto guy and into the film world in some way, albeit more sort of YouTube than sort of a production company. But I just didn't know if you just happened to know of him or not.
No, I think the name was familiar, but I think it's because of your Twitter feed that I was aware of them.
Got it. And then one other question. Toronto, what are your thoughts on Rush? Can we just talk about this real quick? Because I just know that it's like asking, when people ask me about hot chicken, I get really upset because I just don't give a shit about hot chicken. I mean, I like it, but I just don't care about comparing it to all these other things. But that's the Nashville thing or music or whatever. So you're from Toronto. You're gonna get the Rush question. Where are you with the whole thing?
I'm of a generation where that was on like our best of Canadian rock compilation albums, right? Like it wasn't on my radar ever. Like they're cool. They I like some of their music, but I was never like into them. So
sure. Okay.
I'm
well, you escaped
impartial.
that one. I just figured it was one of those things where you're like, I'm from Toronto. If one more fucking person talks about the one thing they know is from Toronto to me again. But I just remember going up there as a kid to Toronto and being so excited because I knew that that's where Rush was. I was like in 5th grade, listening to tapes in my Walkman in the back of my parents' Dodge Caravan, putting the cooler between me and my brother so he can just fuck off. I'm in my own world. Actually, I remember I had a boombox that I used as a seat divider back then, because that was like,
Oh yeah.
I didn't even have a Walkman. I just had a giant boombox. But I remember like listening to like Rush albums, and like we're driving through Canada and Toronto. I was like, wow, you know, shit's metric here. You know, like wow.
Well, we're like, I don't think we're gonna get very annoyed for hearing questions about us, because it means that an American is even thinking about us to begin with. So, so our Canadian inferiority complex allows us to be very polite and appreciate any question you might have about, hey, do you know so and so?
So your Canadian insecurities match up perfectly with our American bloated exceptionalism.
America, fuck yeah!
It's like you know, like you can't figure out why all the girls like the jock dickhead dudes in high school or whatever. Like that's what America is, and then like the girls that fall for the jock dickhead dudes, like that's Canada. It seems like this is kind of what you're saying. I don't know. I feel like Canada's made of more than that, and more than Alanis Morissette too. I think there's a lot of really cool shit there, and it's also kind of the most beautiful place. I mean, Prince Edward Island and all that. My God.
We got some gorgeous spots, but I mean, so does America. I haven't seen too much of America by plane. I've seen it by the road, and it's a gorgeous place to go for road trips. I mean, I can't wait for that to happen again.
Yeah.
You know, I'm eager to get back out there.
In a weird way, it seems like one of the only viable things you can do right now, if you can keep it self-contained and just minimize the bullshit, you know, especially if you have a car you can sleep in or camp out or whatever. Seems like an ultimate time to do like the road trip, because it forces you out of like when we get here we'll get this really nice Airbnb by the lake or something. It's like none of this shit. Like it's like we're out in this kind of mutant virus survival pandemic road warrior kind of mentality. I would like to be out in the car like on a road trip right now, just kind of with a little bit of fear. Like that's not usually road trips are just about a state of wonder. And contemplation. I would like there to be a little cocktail of fear and mortal fear involved.
Yeah. I like that one thing Rich Hall had on The Wanderers or something. It was a documentary about road films, road movies, and he said all road films are a retreat from one thing and a sojourn to another. And if you do like the quarantine road trip, I'm sure we can Google on YouTube right now to see if someone did it. But you couldn't just do a road trip and film it for the quarantine and just say this is what you're doing. You'd have to have a viable goal. Mm-hmm. Like maybe there's a county somewhere that is supposed to be like green, or like the quarantine is being lifted in this place, so this is where we're going, like that.
You have to apply like classic story structure to whatever thing you do, right? Like we're talking
hero's
about
journey.
Exactly. It's either you're doing a quest, or you know you're trying to elicit like a change in your main character. Like what's your goal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So am I here in road trip, guys?
It's up to you two. I'm stuck north of the border here.
I have only been like down here. People are wearing masks as chin straps and then just yelling, and everything's just about whatever libtards or what. I don't know. Just everything is completely bizarre down here as far as what people are actually doing. So I've been erring on the side of absolute caution, because also my wife is really smart and smarter than I am, and she knows when I'm about to do something stupid or want to do something stupid. So I've just been keeping it tight, not doing anything, but I do look forward to getting you know, I don't believe in the new normal, but I do believe in getting the fuck out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm looking forward to that. But I've appreciated the time. I've gotten a shit ton of stuff done, and it's given me a reason to sort of dig deeper into a lot of the things I've been doing. And you guys benefited a little bit from some of the archival work that I've been doing, trying to get all of my shit findable, so that when somebody wants something, I can actually just get it, you know, like and it's already in Google Drive, and it's already there, and I can just be like, oh, Brian wants a thing, I've got a thing, copy the link, paste it in an email, 30 seconds of effort, done. and the benefit of like the pre-work up front and then it paying off even in little moments like that, it's so huge. So I've been trying to just do as much shit like that as I possibly can, because it's really satisfying when it kind of pays off. It doesn't feel like busy work, you know. It feels like necessary shit that I've been sort of not negligent, but it's just there's just an endless amount of things that you could apply up more care to and think more deeply about. So I don't know, I think it's been, in this strange way, kind of all right, but I feel for a lot of people, and it's a weird time, but you know, we're humans. We're so utterly simple, and you know, we figured out the world can stop for about 70 days, and then that's as much as the consciousness can take.
Yeah.
You know, so we learned something. It's good. But anyway, hey, I just want to give you guys some gratitude and some thanks, and I really appreciate your work and your creativity, and it's been also just hugely inspiring to me, and for me to be able to contribute in any way, it's been monumental, and I just appreciate you guys very much, and I hope that we can do something like this again soon, or maybe not soon, but you know, when it's the right time. And I hope that we can keep the train moving. So obviously, anytime you guys need anything, you know, I'm here for you in any way that I can possibly help.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man. So for now, that'll conclude Art Fight Podcast number 90 with Ivan Verlaan and Mr. Regular. I think that's a wrap. Thanks a lot, dudes. Appreciate it. I'll stop the recording, and then we'll do a little post wrap here. All right, but to everybody else, thanks for watching, and